AEW All Out 2025 went down over the weekend. I was there, had a very, very good time, but of course, I was there. Therefore, trying to make content while also trying to be a professional wrestler was super duper hard. But I do want to thank Smash Wrestling, I want to thank C4 Wrestling, and I want to thank Mystery Wrestling for having me along. It honestly was the craziest trip I've ever been on. You can probably see it in my face and hear it in my voice. I had 5 hours sleep in 4 days, which isn't big. It isn't clever, you shouldn't do this. Another reason why this is delayed, I mean, the WrestlePalooza review, which is up right now as well, I edited it in a car, which you can imagine what that looks like. But now that we do have some time, let's get into it and see what we thought about AEW All Out 2025. So I'm going to talk about my own experience first because I did have the live viewing of it. Shout out to all the crazies on the internet that don't understand how media passes work. If you are part of the media and for whatever reason in 2025 YouTube counts within that, you can apply for a media pass, and AEW gave me one. I've done this with WWE and I've done it with other wrestling promotions because it's just part of the structure of a company. And I did want to stay for the press conference, but because WWE invented WrestlePalooza and then AEW moved the show, it meant the Smash Wrestling show that I was performing on got moved after the pay-per-view, so I wasn't able to attend the press conference. So that was very, very sad. But I do want to thank them very much for having me along. Yes, of course, that now means I'm a biased shill. Nobody called me a biased shill when I went to WrestleMania in the same way, so it's all very confusing to me. But I do understand what you mean about the atmosphere. The pops were super huge, but there was a lull in the crowd. I get confused when people say, oh, it's because it's a WWE crowd. That sounds very insulting to WWE fans to just put them in one box, which kind of sums up the problem with the world today. So let's move on from that. Even though I still think that AEW pay-per-views are too long, I'm also being a hypocrite because this didn't feel 5 hours at all or whatever it was. I thought it zoomed on by. I love the fact you get match. Because we had so many plunder bouts as well, we had things that went on the big screen, like backstage segments, which I don't necessarily think AEW always does for pay-per-views, so that was cool. And to anyone that came and said hello to me, and I got to say hi to Queen of the Ring, and I got to say Con Man, which obviously are two people in the creation space, so that was super duper cool. I hate name dropping because I'll forget somebody, and I'll feel really sad. But yes, it was lovely to have that slap bang in the middle, and I did think it was a really good show. I don't think it's the best show that they've done. I don't necessarily think it's a show that we'll go back to and say this was a historic moment in AEW history. But there's a lot to like, and I think we've kind of planted some seeds for the future, especially this big Dynamite announcement on Wednesday, which I think is going to be the women's tag team titles, because after Toni Storm lost her championship, which was a surprise, shout out to Chris Statlander, Mina Shirakawa tweeted something out like, I still want to be your friend, or I still love you, or something like that. So you could actually throw Toni into the tag team scene, which I think would be really, really clever. We talked about this maybe even on the predictions video. Toni Storm doesn't need a championships anymore. Everyone should talk about like who is the Undertaker of WCW or vice versa. Toni Storm is the Undertaker of AEW. What I mean by that is she doesn't need a championship. The gimmick is so good and she's so over. You can kind of have her as your special attraction and it will work. Anyway, let's just get into it. All Out. Edge and Christian versus FTR was the first match. Yes, I just call them Edge and Christian because I make mistakes anyway, and then people get mad, so I may as well own it and move forward. Of course, they are Cope and Cage and Cope, whatever the flub. I just thought this was excellent. The Beth Phoenix return or debut, what a pop, man. What a pleasure. What a privilege to be part of something like that. And obviously, she beats up Stokely Hathaway, which is funny. I will give you the fact the ending was a little bit strange because I think Adam Copeland had been hit with a spike pile driver, a shatter machine, and smashed with the ring bell. And then one spear got the 1, 2, 3. But then I kind of look at it from an escalation point of view, too. What did FTR and Kip Sabian, because Nick Wayne came out in his wheelchair as well, they basically murdered his wife. I mean, that's what they did. Beth Phoenix ran back down to the ring, and Christian Cage got taken out with a spike pile driver too. I saw so many people saying, oh, how can we possibly do the 6-man tag? FTR doesn't have a female competitor. You can have Stokely on one side and Beth on the other side. That's actually more entertaining, and wrestling is meant to be entertaining. But I really enjoyed this match. Even though I've talked about it, Copeland and Christian were reunited in Fast Forward. I actually ignore anything negative I said about it. They're great together. They're so much fun. They were doing many double team moves here. And Copeland kind of went for the hug afterwards. Christian kind of did, but he pushed him off, so we're slowly walking towards that as well. But Beth Phoenix's arrival was just, everybody went nuts. And given that she got spike pile driver, I guess she could be out for a while, which is a shame, because now I want to see her in the women's division. So hopefully she has signed. Again, I'm not that up on my rumours or my news at the moment, so maybe that's already been clarified. But it was a great opener. Obviously, in Toronto, so Christian Cage and Adam Copeland were so over, which was awesome. And Dax wrestled this with a flipping broken nose. I really did enjoy it, and actually, throughout all the matches of the weekend, this was one of my favourites. That it turns out, to use the stupid internet language, I'm just a massive mark for all of these people, including Beth Phoenix. Eddie Kingston versus Big Bill was our second match, and I really wanted to watch this back on television before I did this review, but there's not going to be time, and I'm already past the fact and how YouTube sees it. But I've seen enough chatter. I don't think Eddie Kingston hit that back elbow, right? It's a shame. I think the commentators also sort of announced it as a miss as well, with Bryan Danielson being like, oh no, I think he may have caught him on the jaw. But it's kind of one of those weird double-edged sword things, or mixed bags, I suppose. Eddie Kingston just being back is brilliant. The man is so genuine. I just love him. He was doing all his All Japan stuff, which was great. He probably wanted to lose this match, which is why he let Big Bill kick the absolute crap out of him. When yes, he gets the spinning back fist from nowhere. Certainly from where I was sat, missed by a country mile 1, 2, 3, and that's not great in terms of the performance. But it doesn't matter. It's an error. It's a mistake. He probably does have a good excuse, given that he was off for a year and a half. But some things just kind of sit above. This wasn't about the match. This was about the return of Eddie Kingston. I was mostly more confused about the angle afterwards, because Hook comes out to make the save after Brian Keith gets in there. So suppose we're going to do Eddie Kingston and Hook versus Brian Keith and Big Bill. And I would presume that Eddie Kingston has probably requested this, but I want Eddie Kingston to get back into proper singles feuds, where we get graphics saying addresses his enemies, and that he gets to cut a bunch of promos. Once again, it's good for Hook. He's going to improve here. I don't think this needs to be too long. I love Big Bill. Could do more with him. I love Brian Keith. Same deal. We can do more. But I think Hook could kind of, and what Eddie Kingston to the point, should kind of fly through these people as pretty quickly as he can, and then get to a feud with somebody. Could even be the John Moxley thing, or there's probably a heel I'm not thinking about. Maybe the Carl Fletcher TNT program. Wouldn't mind that at all. But it was here just to remind you that Eddie Kingston is great. There really isn't much else to say about it. He did totally whiff the finish, but it happens. Do you think when he swung that he's like, man, I'm going to totally miss this? Or was it probably just hasn't got his glow back yet? It's going to be that one. Within 6 months, no one's going to be talking about this. Could you have moved it to a Dynamite? Maybe, but it does feel more special doing it on pay-per-view. So, yeah, I'm just going to ignore all of that. Maybe I shouldn't. It's just so cool that Eddie Kingston is back. If nothing else, he's probably been through 16 months of absolute hell to return to this point, and that is way more important. Match number 3, Mark Briscoe versus MJF in a, tables and tacks match, I suppose it was called. I love this. Now, you all knew what it was going to be, but it was the pacing of the thing. They just built up the first tax spot with Mark Briscoe being thrown into them. He then got thrown in over and over again. You knew MJF was going to go in eventually. He did too. But it was just the space and the silence they dared leave between everything else in order to let you know there's gravitas to these things and people are being thrown into pins. I mean, Mark Briscoe got 4 buckets to begin this, and they were all over the ring. Like, there was barely any space where it would have been impossible to even fall on the floor without landing on one, which is probably the same for the referee. And Mark Briscoe won too, and he hit the Dre driller into the flipping tax on MJF, who also got beaten the hell out of by Mystico the day before. Mark Briscoe had tax in the back of his head, and the interesting thing here was so close to the ropes that, again, this is total speculation by me, I kind of took away from it. It was meant to tie into all the finishes that MJF had done, and you were going to assume that MJF was going to put his foot on the ropes and Mark Briscoe would be like, no, it's not fair, we can't do this again. That was probably just an Easter egg, or it didn't exist and I made it up. But Mark Briscoe has that Eddie Kingston energy where you just love him. And I just think MJF is awesome. I think he totally understands what he needs to do and when he needs to do it. He lost here. I mean, you could say pretty clean, but also there was a bunch of weapons and tables. He got Froggy Bow through a table at one point. But I still think he needs to be the person to go back to the main event. And Mark Briscoe announced himself in a 6-man tag with the conglomeration. I can't remember who's fighting now, but Orange Cassidy's going to be back on Wednesday Dynamite, so that's cool too. Very, very heavily hinted. But I just love the fact that, again, we had, how many matches? If you watched the pre-show, there was 14 matches in total. And this one actually went 19 minutes, 20 seconds. But it didn't feel like any other match on the card because of the pacing, because they approached it, and because they used the weapons well too. And if you are going to have a pay-per-view that goes this long, you're going to have the light and the shade, the dark and the light, and the left and the right, and the ups and the downs, which I know all about as well. So just really well done, and kind of stood on its own 2 feet. And we need to have more courage to do things like this. This didn't detract that they weren't going go, 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 go. It meant that when they eventually were thrown into thumbtacks, which suck, I've done it in Progress Wrestling, they're no fun, it made you go, oh my gosh. And how Mark he had so many at the back of his head. It was totally ridiculous. But a really, really good match. Maybe not up to the level of the CM Punk MJF dog collar matches, but that sort of had more emotion built in anyway. But on the night, yes, in terms of keeping you invested and keeping you interested and not feeling the overall running time, I thought this was very well done. And it was sort of the same for the Demand, as they're now being called, Ricochet and the Gates of Agony versus the Hurt Syndicate. Ultimately, this was just to allow Ricochet to pin MVP and essentially also give the Hurt Syndicate a loss. Now, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin had been killed over barricade by this point. But I thought the Gates of Agony looked good, the Ricochet looked good, the Ricochet as I'm going to call him. MVP, given he doesn't wrestle that much, still has it. Like, I really enjoy watching him. I mean, all the deal with Bobby Lashley, he's awesome. And Shelton Benjamin he is putting in a shift, dude. I think he's like 48 years old. That man was born to be a wrestler, and it's a shame so many of his WWE pushes did get derailed. I don't really know what we do from here. I mean, you have to do something, of course, because they didn't necessarily cheat, but they did murk off Bobby and Shelton. And MVP taking the pin is fine. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And Ricochet needed to win here, because if he doesn't win here and he starts a new group, he looks a bit like a loser. So just really good. They all smashed into each other. The Tio Leone is a crazy strong. Like, he was throwing Bobby Lashley around, which was totally nuts. I enjoyed it. It was big men slapping man meat. Obviously, Ricochet brings the high flying angle as well. I watched him break up a pin with a springboard 450, and he did it like it was you and I getting out in the morning and just walking to the bathroom. It was utterly effortless, wasn't even thinking about it. And I like the fact that he won. I think Ricochet has done tremendous work in AEW, and you get those crazies on the internet. You're allowed your opinion. I'm talking about the mean ones who don't really seem to see it's absolutely add a string to his bow, which is what wrestling is all about. You can say, well, in 2000, whatever, he wasn't good at this. Well, now he's added to it, like I say, and he's just improving overall. And there should be some big title push for him at some point, be it TNT or even World, if you want to do that. I would take Hangman Adam Page versus Ricochet, because Ricochet is a massive dickhead. Hangman and Page is meant to be a paragon of virtue. So that one went 30 minutes 45. The only reason I'm not going to point the times for all of them, but I just mean in this area here is where I felt like we kind of zoomed through matches a little bit. It just made the pay-per-view pull palpable, can't say that word, and that's what you want. If you're paying your money, I understand you want as much content as possible, but I'm much more a less is more guy. Let me get to the end and go, oh man, I can't wait to buy the next one. I don't have much to say about Mercedes Mone versus Riho. I mean, Mercedes did cheat because she poked Riho in the eye after distracting the referee, and she hit the Mone maker. Still not 100% convinced by that move, but it looked better here because Riho is so small. Riho looked way better here than she did against whoever the flub she fought over the last two AEW shows. So I think it would be ring rust, but it just massively suffered because there was no jeopardy, which is something you could throw on a lot of the title matches. Now, obviously, one did surprise, so hopefully going forward we'll lose this feeling, but no one in a million years thought Riho was going to win the championship. But she did look good. She stomped on Mercedes a lot, and I just think Mercedes Mone is great for the amount of work she's done in the last 2 years and the amount of people she's wrestled and all the other stuff that goes along with it. I will give her flowers. I will give her plaudits, even though she doesn't need it from a bored a-hole. I really do think she's elevated her own game, elevated the AEW women's game, and elevated the overall women's wrestling game in wrestling, which is the dumbest thing I'll ever say. Are we going to think about this one for too long? I don't think we will, which I think is a bit of a shame, because when Mercedes first came in, it would probably be people like Riho and Nyla Rosa, Britt Baker, because they were the OGs, right? And then you want to see them fight the incoming WWE star, to use that terrible term. But it was all right. It was good. If you're only going to pick a few, though, you may go somewhere else. That's what I'm going to tell you to do with Okada versus Takeshita versus Mascara Dorada. I mean, it was wonderful. But I'll just tell you that Okada won by pinning Mascara Dorada, obviously. But some of the moves they were doing, the timing, the way I want to sum this up to you, and I'm basically taking elements of other things I've said on other videos and social media, you don't have to like this. You can hate it to your heart's content. And when you see clips, you can rage and you can smash your screen should you have the money to replace it. But my gosh, it cannot go away from professional wrestling. Doing some of the sequences they do is next to impossible. It made Dorada a bigger star, even though he lost and took the pin. So we just gave him so much offense, and his offense was totally crazy. Takeshita is just coming across more and more like a babyface, because that's obviously what we want to do versus Okada. And Okada winning and just putting on this is one of his best performances in AEW. I thought it was tremendous. Again, this one I am going to mention because it was 21 minutes, right? 20 minutes, it feels about 12. It's not like it's just all out speed. It's not like go, 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 go. They take their lulls and they take their times as well. And Okada busts out a couple of awesome drop kicks. But it was a spectacle to see live. And as a guy that wrestles and was wrestling sort of around all of this, you're like, I'm not saying this in a disparaging way to me, but I'm never going to be able to do that. I think it's almost like genetics, or you're born with it, if Maybelline had a say in it. So it was really good. It was a great triple threat match. Still hilarious that Okada had to qualify for his own title bout, but I'm not going to worry about when you get this on the level. I genuinely think anyone that told me they properly hated it is probably grifting. I think anybody could sit down and appreciate that for what it was, because they're just so skilled and they're so awesome, and I flipping loved it. And it was also followed by Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin in a coffin match, where, and I haven't double-checked to see what was going down, but it certainly looked to me like Darby Allin bit open Jon Moxley's ear for real and then stuck a screwdriver or something else through it. I mean, that's disgusting. The big surprise here, though, is that Pac was back. And for where I was sitting, he didn't look like Pac, he's cut his hair. So who's this strange, dark-headed man? He absolutely killed Darby Allin, who also did this crazy coffin drop instantly as soon as the match started off a balcony. The man does not care. Obviously, Pac does that. He is a bastard, throws him in the casket coffin, and Moxley closes it for the 1, 2, 3. The Death Riders marched out halfway through this just to unloosen the bottom ropes so they could push the casket in. That was very weird. Now, do I think there were too many stipulations on this card, even though it helped with the running time? Yes, because by the time you've seen the umpteenth table, the umpteenth chairs, obviously thumbtacks kind of tie into that, well, maybe a kendo stick. It's just the law of diminishing returns. That's what your brain does. So I guess they went in a different direction and came up with things that nobody else, if you pitched them to anybody else, they'd be like, I'm not going to do that, John Moxley and Darby Allin. But I think we do have something here. I think the way that John Moxley won was sort of, with a friend. So we can probably do some tags, maybe do 6-man tags. Maybe we bring in some people I haven't even thought about right now, like Samoa Joe and the Opportunities. That would be good. Darby Allin probably doesn't need to go on a bit of a winning streak, but I think John Moxley winning here actually made more sense because coming out of All In, I think they have big plans for him, as they should do because he's great too. I wouldn't necessarily recommend watching it if your stomach goes queasy. It's pretty flub-dub. But AEW does stipulations. They promise to do exactly what it says on the tin. I think they summed it up wonderfully. As did Chris Statlander, beating Toni Storm, and literally as well in the four-way, she pinned her, beating Tekla, and beating, who the hell was the other one, Jamie Hayter. Nobody saw this coming. If you're one of these morons on the internet going, I knew it was going to happen. No, you didn't. Everybody thought Toni Storm was going to hold on to them, but we've talked about this. I think using Wheeler Yuta's seatbelt pin, whatever it's called, could tie into a story, or it could just be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Chris Statlander got the biggest reaction because nobody expected it and because she deserves it to use that dumb chant. And now in every match, at least for the next 6, 8, maybe in 12 weeks, you will second guess everything because you're not 100% sure. But it was absolutely excellent. I love the fact that AEW did this. Chris Statlander should hold that belt for a while. I think she gets super serious with it. And I'm Goofy Wrestling for Life, man. But I think that'll work for her really, really well. And look how far she's come. Talking about Goofy Wrestling for Life. An alien when AEW started and now the champion. You don't even need to do the one-to-one with Toni Storm. They're both baby faces. Toni Storm would be able to promo that off, no problem. But maybe something like Tekla versus Chris Statlander or even Jamie Hayter, because once again, they kept smashing into each other. But the match was fine. I wouldn't necessarily say it was anything special. They worked well, but there was sort of a lot of chaos, which you can get in multi-persons. But the win makes up for it, right? Sometimes wrestlers say that it's all about the entrance because you get a reaction. It's about the finish because you want to get that reaction. They got the reaction. Jamie Hayter. Chris Statlander seemed super happy. I love this. I thought it was good. Just do more of it as and when. Not all the time because it go the other way. But fair play to having the balls to do it. I mean, Toni Storm has held that belt for like a year. It's been a long old time. The four-way ladder match was just tremendous as well. Bro Dido versus the Young Bucks versus Jet Speed versus the Don Callis family. Josh Alexander took a moonsault, Bandido moonsault with a ladder straight to the face, and he's got a bad neck. I'm not going to be able to run you down every spot we did in this. They just did everything. I think Young Bucks are one of the best tag teams ever. I think Bro Dido have come together to be this awesome brand new tag team that makes the whole scene exciting. Day one, of course, here as well. There was one hilarious bit where Bandido could have just grabbed the titles, but he's so desperate to dive, he ignored it. I've been informed as well that Bryan Danielson was having a meltdown on commentary about that too. Even though I do like the goofy side of wrestling, I do think you struggle to get away with that. I think sometimes when it's so obvious, just go for the belt and believe in everybody else around you. And Jet Speed, man, Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey were doing some awesome moves. There was this one point where I think it was Mike Bailey slid beneath and Kevin Knight jumped over it like they were playing a video game. They are video game characters. I love them so much. And they're so good that they can lose and actually get away with it because they always bring something new to the table. Bandido and Brody King coming together absolutely works. You can tell they are friends. It was just so crazy. And it was so over the top. Once again, I'm talking about it from a live perspective. So you hear the noise, you hear the roar in a very different way. You can smell the sweat and see the tears. But it makes the experience better. So I'm giving you my experience from that point of view. It goes back to my Batman argument. That Batman game wouldn't be very good if Batman was in it. Well, he's in it. Simon, maybe you wouldn't have enjoyed all that as much if you weren't there, but I was there, so my enjoyment levels that I'm bringing to you are true. Fair play for keeping the titles on Brodido, Bandido, Bram Bellamy Bin, whatever you want to call it. I think it's the right thing to do, especially because now, after this was done, Jack Perry returned, summoned Luchasaurus again. Somebody told me I was wrong with this, so I did go and watch that. Maybe I've got the wrong clip, but I saw Luchasaurus coming to life in a hospital room, which makes no sense given he came back a few weeks ago to help out and then fall out with Kip Sabian. It doesn't matter though, because seeing the Jurassic Express back together probably got the second or third loudest pop of the night. People were so happy, and the Jack Perry thing is done. Let's bring him back to that nice guy, that lovable guy that everybody enjoyed. If we are going to start doing all the craziness of the tag teams, throw another one in there. You can't have too many teams if they're of that quality, and you remember how good Luchasaurus and Jack Perry were. Also, love that Tony Khan, man. Beth Phoenix and this on the same night, right? It should be a yearly tradition of All Out, but I thought this was excellent. I think it's one of the best matches of the weekend. I think we could probably tone it down with ladder matches across the board. But when these guys go in there and deliver a performance of that ilk, I don't think you can criticize it. And I love the fact that Brody and Bandito are still the champions. I thought for a while that would be your one and done. The Young Bucks would win it back here. Or maybe even FTR would have won them, but we're not doing that at all. So yes, keep on doing this. Just brilliant. How long is it? I'm lied to you. I'm telling you. It's 24 minutes, 40 seconds. Probably a bit too long, but you're never going to feel it. However, I did think 38 minutes, 10 seconds for Hangman and Page versus Kyle Fletcher for the world title was too long, just because I think this should be the less is more match. I thought we should have got in there, proved that Hangman is a worthy champion, proved that Kyle Fletcher is a future champion, and then got out of Dodge about 15 minutes. I know why we did this. Capitalism rules, and WWE WrestlePalooza was starting. They can do whatever they want with that. I'm too tired to worry about it. But it didn't affect Kyle Fletcher, who looked great here, and Hangman and Page is the best champion. I think I probably would have kicked out of less finishes overall, less brain busters. I think Hangman only hit one buckshot lariat and one. I could be wrong there. Again, I watched it a very long time ago as far as my mental processing power is considered. But it did, it's one of those weird things. It did feel like a main event, but it probably lacked something. And that something is Kyle Fletcher, who needed this main event. So now people realize it can be in the main event. So when they do it again, they obviously will. It'll be up here. AEW also didn't go back on their stipulation. Nobody did come down, so it was a hard fight. I am a little bit loosey-goosey with the rules. Got a dead eye through the table. That was perfectly fine. I don't understand how much you're allowed to use the ringside friends on the outside. Also, there were just too many tables in general throughout the whole show. I think if you are going to save them for the main event, obviously MJF needed them. The name was in the clue was in the name. But that's something else I would do too, because I think from my vantage point, the crowd have got lesser and less of these as I saw more and more of them. The other problem, to be way too negative, it doesn't matter, is that nobody believed that Kyle Fletcher could win. He shouldn't have done it. It would have been terrible. But eventually Hangman hits this awesome buckshot. He did go for one, and Kyle Fletcher clapped like Kenny Omega in that Wrestle Kingdom match against Okada. I think it was Okada, maybe Dominion. And it was really, really cool, but Hangman finished him off anyway. They have great chemistry. What Hangman has said should be true. If this is the Chris Jericho and Hangman and a Page situation from, 2020, maybe 2019, this should be the 2025 one that ends with Kyle Fletcher becoming the champion. You haven't got to do it in the next 6 months or even a year, but he's proven today. He's got the height, he's got the size, he's willing to work for it, and he's there now. I think that is probably justified. But even if he has to dip back his toe into the TNT title stuff, that's fine as well. But it was a really, really good main event. For me, if we'd just gone 25, I just think it would have hit me harder. But I was also exhausted by this point. I had 2 hours sleep, and I was trying to, what's going on in WrestlePalooza? So it's absolutely exhausting. It was a great show, All Out 2025. I honestly think you could just randomly pick any match and you would get something from it. So maybe there wasn't this sort of like super duper whooper star match, but all the other ones below it made it feel like a big old deal. And apparently it's done very, very well, but I certainly enjoyed myself. However, you may have hated it, so drop me a comment below. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video on the screen, which is my WrestlePalooza very weird hotel review. I promise you I did my best from a moving vehicle. Otherwise, Simon316 on social media, Simon on Cameo, TikTok, and Pro Wrestling Tees, a Big Cartel. Thank you for everyone that did come out to Canada to support me this weekend. It blows my brain. I'm just going to tell you, because you get the opposite side. No one from WWE, AEW's ever paid me any money to say anything about their product. I get invited to all the shows, which I'm super grateful for. But yes, All Out 2025 it's just what AEW does now. They've established what their pay-per-view level is going to be, and I can't see them moving away from it. And we even got a bit of comedy on there as well. AEW All Out, you were all right by me. See you tomorrow.